From Washington, D.C., news center of the world, Mutual brings you the most revealing half hour in radio, Meet the Press, America's press conference of the air. We invite you to listen to an unrehearsed and spontaneous press conference as four of the country's ace reporters fire questions at Senator Joseph McCarthy, Republican of Wisconsin, whose sensational charges against the State Department were responsible for the present investigation. Each week, Mutual presents Meet the Press in cooperation with the editors of the American Mercury, the monthly magazine that is as revealing, outspoken, and stimulating as this program. Our press conference will begin in just a moment. Is it hogwash and politics, or is it pay dirt and public service? The nationwide commotion over the charges of communism and security risk in the State Department are reaching a climax. It has even left a trail around the globe. The State Department claims that the charges have weakened the hands of our diplomats. Soviet commentators have stood on the sidelines and jibed delightedly. In this country, some Republican leaders have redoubled their cries of administration softness toward communists. Democrats have been in furious counterattack against the author of the charges. But there have been members of both parties who have wondered if the whole row is without substance and harmful to our foreign policy. Has this been a shotgun attack, injuring innocent people wholesale? Was it contrived in malice and irresponsibility? Or has there been reasonable cause for investigation? Has the administration prevented a full investigation? Should the Senate inquiry be broadened out or cut short? In other words, are there now reasonable grounds to proceed, or are the charges so empty that they are a dismal farce? Is it time to put the shotgun in the closet and its owner on the shelf, or is it time to take him seriously and give more attention to his target and less to his motives and methods? Here to answer these and other questions you would ask if you were here is Senator Joseph McCarthy. And here is the well-known editor of the American Mercury magazine, Mr. Lawrence Spivak, to welcome Senator McCarthy and to welcome also the members of the press.
Here we are again at another weekly news conference. Around the press table are May Craig of the Portland Press Herald, Ernest Lindley of Newsweek magazine, William S. White of the New York Times, and Frank McNaughton of Time magazine. Facing the press table is Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, Republican of Wisconsin, the author of the charges of subversion in the State Department. You may have heard Senator McCarthy on Meet the Press earlier in the year. He returns because the height of public clamor over his charges has now been reached with the testimony yesterday by Louis Boudin, the former communist editor. Senator McCarthy is a lawyer, a former judge, a former Marine gunner, a fighter on the public scene who is not afraid of the number or the strength of his enemies, even if they reach up to the White House. Now, I see Mr. Lindley has the first question.
Senator McCarthy, on February 9th at Wheeling, West Virginia, you said, or were quoted as saying, "I have here in my hands a list of 205. A list of names that were made known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party and who nevertheless are still working and shaping policy in the State Department." Now, do you still maintain, in view of what you've learned since, that there are 205 or any similar number of communists working in the State Department today?
First, Mr. Lindley, let's get our figures straight. I read from a letter of the Secretary of State Burns to the effect that there were 205 individuals in the State Department whom the President's own loyalty board had said were dangers to the government. I pointed out that while the Secretary himself said those men are unfit for government service, they are still working there. I said, now, as to those 205, unfortunately I cannot get the names, but I do have in my hand the names of 57 individuals who are either communists who are certainly loyal to the Communist Party. Now, you asked whether or not I still make the same claim. Since then, my investigation has added additional names, so that I have now given the Senate committee a total of about 100 names that have in the loyalty files and the FBI files information which indicates they are extremely dangerous to this nation. And I stand by that. no question about it. And if anyone cares to, or if the president cares to prove that I'm wrong, then let him open those files and let the Senate see what's in them.
Senator, go back to that 205. Was not that letter of Secretary Burns a memorandum or letter which concerned the screening of some 4,000 persons who had just been transferred or recently been transferred en masse, so to speak, from the office, the OSS, the OWI, and other agencies? And did he not say that there were 284 that the Security Board had recommended against for permanent employment, and that 79 of those had already been released?
We'll subtract 79 from 284,
and you get
have
205.
205.
But that was in July 1946.
That's
was
what
it
makes
not?
it more dangerous, Mr. Lindley. The fact that in 1946, the president's own board, that wasn't a Republican board or a Democratic board. That's a board the president appointed. He said, in these men I've got confidence. You screen, it wasn't 4,000, 3,000 of the 16,000. He said, you put your finger on those individuals who are dangerous to this nation. That board did that. And then the Secretary of State said, I shall ignore that board. He kept on 205 of those individuals. Now, I have asked the Secretary of State by wire, by letter. I have asked the President. I have asked Mr. Tidings and McMahon, who run this committee, this miscalled investigating committee, to get the names of the 205 who are still in the State Department. But so far, neither the President nor the committee nor the Secretary of State have indicated even the slightest interest in finding out how many of that 205 that the President's board said are dangerous are still in the State Department.
That 205 were not all supposed to be communists, were they? It covered aliens, it covered other people who, for one reason or another.
Just a minute, Mr. Lindley. The Secretary's letter showed that they discharged the aliens. They got rid of the aliens, the 79, I think some 40 were aliens, but the only ones they retained were the ones not that McCarthy said were dangerous, not individuals that McCarthy said was disloyal. I wasn't here then, I was out in the Pacific. Those were individuals whom the President's own board said they're dangerous. They said, Mr. Secretary of State, you should not keep them. I see we got other hands up here.
Mrs. Craig.
Well, could I get a yes or no? I mean, you get me all confused by your long answers. Now,
there's nobody I'd rather answer yes or no to than you.
All right, now, that's a promise. Did you or did you not say in the Wheeling speech that there were 205 card-carrying communists in the State Department and that Secretary Atchison knew it?
I said there were, the answer is no, May. I said there were 57 who were either members of the party or who were loyal to the party. Now, I say that list, that is a list I had then. Since then, my investigation has added more to that list so that I have now given the committee a list of over 100, and it's a little over 100.
Now, that's one of the longest yes or no's I've had. Now, let's keep them short so we can get many questions. Now, keep going, Mrs. Craig.
Do you have...
Just a minute before Mrs. Craig keeps going. I'm going to say that whether they're long or short, I'm going to try and adequately answer each question.
Do you have a record or the text of the speech as delivered or a transcript of it?
Oh, yes, Mrs. Craig. The entire speech was read into the record on the 20th day of February. Originally, I asked permission to insert it in the record. Senator Lucas objected. So then I read the speech into the record in toto.
The speech as delivered, was there any
as delivered at Wheeling, West Virginia.
Was there a record of it?
There was a record, Mrs. Craig, but I understand that the station cleaned off the tape. What that means, I don't know. That means they've destroyed the record.
Mr. White.
At the time, on February 20th, however, let me answer if I may finish your question. On February 20th, however, I understand that record was still available. At that time, I told the Democratic leader, Senator Lucas, that by paying $3.50, he could get the original record. But there was no interest in that original record at that time.
Mr. White.
Senator, apart from that Wheeling speech, which does seem somewhat disputed, on February the 20th on the Senate floor, you did say, I believe, several times that there were, quote, at least 57,
that's right,
unquote, communists in or recently in the State Department. Now, I know you're depending now largely on another case, but is it a fact that you have not shown 57 or even one communist in the State Department?
Wait just a second, Mr. White. When I was on the Senate floor, and the Senate all agreed with me, you understand, I recited to the senators what was in the files. I pointed out to them that those files were developed by thousands of investigators over periods of months and up some of them as long as 10 years. The FBI, the ONI, Army Intelligence, the Civil Service Commission. And I said to the senators then that it's very simple to get these cases, get to the files. We voted. And you understand, not a single Democrat, not a single Republican disagreed with me. They all voted to get those files and find out what was wrong with those individuals, find out whether McCarthy was telling the truth or whether he was mistaken.
Well,
and now
Senator,
let me say this.
certainly.
Since then, the president has decided not to make those files available. And I'm sure that you and I will agree that if those files showed that I was mistaken or lying in even one case, those files would be darn well made available before sunrise tomorrow morning.
I don't agree with that.
Just a minute, Mr. Lindley. Mr.
Senator,
White.
apart from that, which I can't comment on, do you now stand, and again I say apart from the big case that you're now standing on primarily, do you now still stand on the statement that there were recently at least 57 communists in the State Department?
Exactly what I said, either communists or individuals who are loyal to the party. Now, you're speaking of the big case that I stand on. Let me make it clear that you can't have a big case or a little case. Anyone who is disloyal to this... Yes.
That was your definition.
Yes. Now, I said, no, I said this is one of the most important cases. And let me make it clear why we're spending so much time with this Lattimore case. There was so much doubt expressed by some of my friends on the other side of the aisle as to whether the file, what I said in the files, was true or not. I said to them, now, take the case of Owen Lattimore. Take that one case. Use that as an example. And if I am telling the truth, if I am correct in regard to this man, Owen Lattimore, then let's be done with this petty politics and get about the job of investigating. If, on the other hand, if the files show that I am wrong insofar as Owen Lattimore is concerned, then you can discredit much of what I've said. Now, I think tonight most of you will agree that at least substantially the facts in the Lattimore case have been proven, and wait until the rest of the witnesses appear.
Mr. McNaughton.
I'd like to ask 2 or 3 short questions, and I won't make them very long,
I'll
Senator.
try and make the answer short then, too.
All right. In the first place, what do you think about Boudin's testimony that you were technically incorrect when you charged that Lattimore was the top communist spy in the United States, as Boudin's testified yesterday? What do you have to say on that after having said that you rest your case on the Lattimore case?
Well, number one, I don't rest my case on any one witness. Mr. Boudin said that Mr. Lattimore was one of the top men in the communist apparatus.
Not of his own personal knowledge, though.
Oh, yes.
Only what he had heard.
Oh, no. He said of his own personal knowledge. He said that as the editor of the Daily Worker, as a man who sat in on the Common Form meetings, that is the top communist apparatus in this country, he said there was transmitted to us orders from Moscow. And then the question was, how were those orders transmitted? They were transmitted through Owen Lattimore, according to Mr. Boudin. Mr. Boudin further testified that in his work as a top communist agent, as Mr. Boudin said, he said, I was part of that conspiracy. He said, we got these onion skin papers. He said they didn't use the names of the most valuable communists, but they used symbols. And he said Owen Lattimore's symbol was L or an XL. And he said, I have seen countless numbers of papers with Owen Lattimore's symbol on it. Now, that is personal knowledge.
May I ask you another question right there? Didn't he testify also that he had never seen Owen Lattimore, didn't know him personally, had never seen him in a communist meeting, and that he was dependent on statements made to him by Browder, Stachel, and others?
He also testified that he has never met...
And that you were technically incorrect when you charged that Lattimore was the top
Take one at a time
spy.
now, Mr. McNaughton. He also testified that he never has met Joe Stalin. He's also testified he never met Gromyko. But he said there's no doubt in my mind that Stalin is a communist. There's no doubt in my mind that Gromyko is a communist. And he said, likewise, there's no doubt in my mind that Owen Lattimore is a communist. Because he said, in my work as an official of the Communist Party, I had to have that information. He said, I got that information. I used it over a period of about 10 years. Or let me correct myself, 8 years, I believe it was. Mr. Craig, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Craig.
But is it what's that got to do with it, Joe? The man said specifically in answer to a question from the council that of my own knowledge I cannot say that he is as a communist.
No, just a minute, Mrs. Craig. Under heckling and browbeating...
I didn't hear any heckling and browbeating.
Just a minute, Ray. Just a minute,
You
Mrs.
left
Craig.
before it was
Now,
over.
Let's not argue
just a
about
minute.
these things.
Mr. Lattimore was asked to answer yes or... Not Mr. Lattimore, I'm sorry. Mr. Boudens was asked to answer yes or no as to whether he knew that Lattimore was a communist from his own personal knowledge. He said, no, I'm not a lawyer, Mr. Senator, Senator Tidings. He said, as far as I'm concerned, as I recall his testimony, he said, when I see an onion skin paper with Mr. Lattimore's symbol on it, L or XL, he said, when Mr. Stachel, who is head of the party, comes down to me day after day, tells me that I must know who the top members of the Communist Party is. And when they inform me who those members are, to me, he said, that's personal knowledge. He said, and to get down to your question, Mrs. Craig, he said, now, if you mean, did I see him at a communist meeting? Did I see his communist card? He said, no, I did not. Now, there was a truthful man. I think you'll all admit, I believe most of you were there, will admit that that man appeared to be the most truthful witness you have seen on that stand, with perhaps the exception. Strike that.
Well, Senator, does your whole case rest on Mr. Boudens, or have you other witnesses?
My whole case does not rest upon Mr. Boudens.
Have you any other witnesses?
Yes, there's one witness that I think that the committee should immediately call, and this is not new to the Senate committee. There's a man called Frank Belaski. The committee has been asked to call him. Mr. Hickenlooper asked the committee to call him even before they called Mr. Boudens. Mr. Belaski, incidentally, is a security officer of the OSS, an investigator. He is the man who made Malaysia. Now, Malaysia is a communist organ. Mr. Field is the president. Mr. Jaffe was the treasurer. And Mr. Owen Lattimore was on the editorial board. And Mr. Boudens said, I can say definitely, and I'll offer documentary proof to show that both Field and Jaffe were espionage agents of the Communist Party. Now, this man Belaski, can offer very valuable testimony upon the entire Amerasia case. Now, you understand, pardon me, I'll just got to take another 10 or 15 seconds, if I may. Keep this in mind when we talk about the Amerasia case. We're not merely talking about the treasonable act of stealing some 500 or 600 documents from the state and various other departments. We're speaking of the entire Soviet espionage apparatus. And that is the thing that must be broken. And this man, Belaski, who should be called, but the committee seems to have no interest in him. When that man is called, he will shed considerable light upon that espionage apparatus.
Now, Mrs. Craig.
I want to ask you one more question about Lattimore before we get away from him. He has said under oath that he is not and has not been a communist in any shape or form. Now, do you charge him with perjury?
I'm not going to charge him with anything, Mrs. Craig. I'm going to present the evidence in the Lattimore case as completely as I can and before a hostile committee. Now, you understand, originally, I told the Senate that it would be impossible to present the Lattimore case in any completeness without getting at the file. The file, that you recall, the FBI presented a review of in 14 pages, a 14-page review. However, in view of the fact that the President said those files will be kept secret, I have set about the task of trying to at least present enough of the Lattimore case so that the American people will force this committee and force the President to open those files. I don't mean open them to the public, but to open them to those 5 senators so that we can do a house-cleaning job. And I do hope that when the Lattimore case is completed, although I think it's fairly complete now, but there will be more evidence, then I do hope that public opinion forces the committee and forces the President to do the job that the Senate asked them to do about 10 or 11 weeks ago.
Now, Mr. Lindley.
Senator, regardless of what happens in the Lattimore case, he is not an employee of the State Department, and I believe, except for one brief period, was not an employee.
That's not correct, Mr. Lindley. That's not correct.
Is he an employee today of the State Department?
Well, the State Department says he's not an employee, but we've paid him. Now, I don't quite get the difference of opinion. There's a number of things.
Yes, but now when was he
Now,
an
just, you let me
employee?
That's one at a time. That's one at a time. Talk.
You let me answer. Whether you call him technically an employee or not. The important thing is, has he been shaping that disastrous policy in Asia? Now, just put that finger down and answer this question, will you? I have pointed out that one of the things that Mr. Lattimore did was to furnish a secret document to guide Mr. Jessup. Mr. Jessup, the ambassador at large, in formulating his program. After I gave that information, Mr. Atchison called a formal press conference, and I believe you were there. Mr. Atchison at that time said there is no such a document. Then later on in the afternoon, one of the lesser officials in the department said, "Oh yes, now we've found the document." But they said, "It's so secret, we can't give that to the American people." Then the next day I said, "Now if you can't give it to the American people, I can. And I think it's so important they should have it." I said, "Now unless you make that available, it will be made available." Now that was a document that guided Mr. Jessup, that followed the Communist Party platform right down to the last comma. And that was filed with the State Department at the request of Mr. Atchison, regardless of whether Mr. Jessup or Mr. Lattimore got paid or not.
How do you know it guided Mr. Jessup? How do you know that guided Mr. Jessup?
Well,
it was one of many that was submitted, was it not?
Well, whether it guided him or not, the document bore the inscription on the top of it that no, just let me finish. Now, you say, how do I know it guided Mr. Jessup? Yeah. The document bore the inscription, "This is being furnished for the guidance of Mr. Jessup."
Wasn't it not one of a great many memoranda requested from different people?
Oh, no. There's another thing now, and I can tell you this tonight, and I haven't discussed this before.
Can you tell it to us briefly, Senator? We've got just about 9 minutes.
Well, now, if you want to get the answer, I'll give it to you. This is something I can't give any yes or no, Mr. Spivak. If you want the information, I'll give it to you. You ask whether or not that was one of 31, was that it?
I didn't
The State Department said that all the members of the Round Table who met in November were requested to give such documents. Now, that is not the truth, and I haven't discussed this until last night. Since that time, I have checked with six of the 31. They said, number one, when Lattimore was asked to prepare that document, we didn't even know that we were going to be invited to a round table. And number two, they said, we were not asked to prepare any documents. Now, I just don't like that type of falsehood and subterfuge on the part of the State Department. The Lattimore document was a document in and of itself. It had nothing to do whatsoever with that round table, and if it did, I challenge the State Department to furnish the 31 other documents. They won't do it because they can't do it.
Senator, you said that Owen Lattimore was the chief architect of our disastrous policy.
Now, just a minute. I haven't said that.
Architect.
You and practically every other newsman who's been writing in the Far East has referred to him from time to time as the architect of the Far Eastern policy. Your own magazine, Mr. Lindley, has referred to him repeatedly, time after time, as the architect of the Far Eastern policy.
I've never so
Mr.
referred.
McNaughton's magazine,
question
which I don't normally read, Time magazine. Mr. McNaughton's magazine, just 2 weeks ago, or I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks, in one section, said, now, this stuff McCarthy is giving you, in effect, is hogwash. This man Lattimore isn't so important to the Far East. But then in their international section, they point out that Lattimore is, in effect, the architect of the Far Eastern policy. You know, Bill White, you've been sitting there trying to ask a question for a long time.
Just a minute now. Mr. McNaughton has to have a chance to get in on this time business.
Okay, Frank.
Senator, first, let's don't question the magazines, but let's get right down to brass tacks on this. You're a lawyer and a former judge in the state of Wisconsin. Do you believe in the grand jury system of American justice?
That is why I've requested that the Lattimore case be presented to the grand jury.
May I ask you if the Amerasia case wasn't thoroughly investigated by a grand jury here and then thrashed out in the courts?
Well, Mr. McNaughton, just so you won't be too embarrassed, now don't talk too much about the Amerasia case, because I'm going to make you a promise tonight. I'm going to promise you that Amerasia case is going to break soon, and all the power in Washington can't keep it from breaking.
Well,
because the stench is too great that has been covered up, and that case is going to break.
It was investigated, though, wasn't it, by a grand jury?
The Amerasia case was presented to a grand jury. A House committee decided that grand jury had acted so badly that a House committee was called to investigate not Mr. Service and the men who were up before the grand jury, but to investigate the grand jury. And that House committee, by a split vote of 3-2, decided they would not take any action against that grand jury. I might say this. I might say that I think it's extremely unfortunate that they did not take action against the grand jury. But at this late date, I can promise you tonight there will be developments in that Amerasia case.
That's neither here nor there, Senator. The fact of the matter are that the Amerasia case was investigated by a grand jury. Isn't that right?
The Amerasia case was not investigated by the grand jury.
Well, they brought in
The
indictments.
grand
There were
jury did
trials.
not investigate. The FBI developed over months with hundreds of investigators a case against 6 defendants, one of them John S. Service. When the arrests were made, J. Edgar Hoover said this is an airtight case of espionage. However, when the Justice Department attorney presented that case to the court, this is Hoover's, and as you know, J. Edgar Hoover doesn't make many overstatements.
I know, I read that in his speech last night.
One of the most brilliant, I think, law enforcement agents in the world.
Right.
He said this is a 100% airtight case of espionage. However, when that was presented to the court, a young Justice Department attorney said, now I can dispose of this case in less than 5 minutes. A case that took the FBI months to get together. So don't talk to me about a grand jury. I'll just tell you now that Amerasia case, which concerns the whole, not the entire, it's one of the important. See, the Soviets have various espionage networks. One of the most important espionage networks, that case is going to break, and right now it stinks to high
Now,
heaven.
we have time for only a few more short questions. Mr. White.
Senator, going back a moment to the discussion you had with Mr. Lindley about, in which Ambassador Jessup was mentioned, getting away from documents a moment, what do you think about the very strong statements made for Ambassador Jessup by General Marshall, General Eisenhower, and Mr. Henry Stimson?
Between you and I am not much concerned about what any individual out through the country has to say about these
Jessup had worked with General Marshall.
Just a second. I'm concerned with the facts. And when Mr. Jessup was in charge of a publication that peddled the Communist Party line, when I presented to the committee in the Senate the photostats of checks showing thousands of dollars of communist money paid to Mr. Jessup's organization, as I have said, Mr. Jessup may have been a dupe. He may not have known why the communists were paying this money. But take my word for it, Mr. White, and you're one of the most, I think, competent men down here in Washington.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not speaking about the ladies, Mrs. Craig. All present company except one of the most competent men here. I'm sure you will agree with me that even if Mr. Jessup was a dupe, you'll agree the communists were not dupes. They knew why they were paying thousands of dollars to Jessup's organization while its publication was peddling the Communist Party line.
Senator, didn't the president ask that loyalty board to recheck those files again after your accusations, and isn't that sufficient for your purposes?
Well, you've got about 2 minutes, and this will have to be about at least a minute answer. Let me tell
Better
you something
make it
tonight.
shorter than that.
Let me tell you something tonight that I know the
I'm sorry that I won't be able to give you a chance to answer that one,
All right.
Senator. Our time is up. Again, our guest has demonstrated that he loves a good fight. He can take it as well as give it. As always, the right and wrong of the issue involved we leave to our listeners to decide. For this press conference of the air, the thanks of the Mutual Network go to you, Senator Joseph McCarthy, and to the members of the press. Ernest Lindley of Newsweek magazine, May Craig of the Portland Press Herald, William S. White of the New York Times, and Frank McNaughton of Time magazine. Until next time, this is your moderator, Lawrence Spivak. We'll be back in a moment.
Dorothy Kenyon 1 week and Senator McCarthy another. It sets the pattern of Meet the Press. To be well informed, Americans must hear the people who make the headlines. Senators and labor leaders, cabinet members and diplomats, scientists and industrialists, liberals, conservatives, and communists. Meet the Press tries to get at the truth about a man or a situation. Every shade of opinion gets its day on the air. Here newsmen exercise their right to information. They question searchingly. From the center of the news front, Meet the Press brings these exchanges direct to you, our listeners. No rewrite men are in between. Nothing is off the record. Remember, the questions of reporters may not indicate their own opinions. They take different ways of digging for information. They explore the criticisms others have voiced. And those being interviewed are speaking extemporaneously. replying to unrestricted questions, courageous men ready to meet the challenge of a free press and a free radio. And now, an invitation to our listeners. We are sending a 30-volume deluxe edition of the Encyclopedia Americana worth $249.50 to Mr. H.W. Romaine of East Cleveland, Ohio, for his letter to meet the press on our broadcast with Irving S. Olds. We invite all of you listening in to write us a letter of 250 words or less on this broadcast with Senator McCarthy. If your letter is judged the best by our editorial board, Meet the Press will send you a 30-volume deluxe edition of the Encyclopedia Americana worth $249.50. All letters become the property of Meet the Press, and the decision of our editorial board is final. Your letter must be postmarked not later than midnight, April 27th. Be sure to sign your full name and address your letter to Meet the Press, care of the Mutual Broadcasting System, Washington, D.C. Listen in again next week when John Foster Dulles, who was just appointed by the President as consultant to the Secretary of State on foreign policy, in answer to mounting criticism that our foreign policy was no longer bipartisan, meets the press. Meet the Press is produced by Martha Roundtree. It is presented in cooperation with the American Mercury magazine, which each month publishes the most interesting Meet the Press broadcast. Fred Fisk speaking. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.